On a frozen winter street, a 5-year-old girl pointed through falling snow and whispered, "Dad, she looks just like me." Moments later, a child vanished into the cold, carrying a secret buried for 5 years, a stolen birth, and a truth that would shatter one family and remake it. Snow fell softly over Ravenport, a quiet northern town wrapped in winter silence. The streetlights glowed amber against the white, turning each snowflake into something almost gentle, almost kind. Ethan Cole, 36, adjusted his wool coat as he stepped out of the cafe, the doorbell chiming behind him. In his gloved hand was a large cup of hot chocolate steam curling into the cold air like a fragile promise of warmth. "Dad, can I hold it?" Lila Cole 5 reached up with both mittened hands, eyes bright, cheeks pink from the cold. "It's heavy," Ethan warned softly. "I know. I'm strong," she said, serious, as if accepting a mission. He smiled. At 5, Lila treated everything like it mattered. They walked slowly along Main Street, boots crunching against fresh snow. Shop windows glowed with holiday lights, scarves, toys, warm coats. Things people bought without thinking. Ethan breathed in deeply. Moments like this were rare. Work consumed most of his life. These winter walks with Lila were sacred. "My fingers are cold," Lila said, tightening her grip on the cup. "Want me to take it?" "No, I can do it myself." Ethan recognized that stubborn streak. She got it from him. They passed the bakery, its windows fogged with warmth, the pharmacy, the bank, familiar places, a familiar life. Since Marianne had left this world 5 years ago, the house had grown too quiet, too big. Lila filled it with noise and questions and laughter, keeping him anchored. "Dad, look," Lila pointed. "That dog is waiting in the snow, just like he believes someone's coming back." Ethan followed her gaze and nodded. "Some animals don't stop waiting," he said. He didn't know yet how close those words were to the truth. They were halfway down the block when Lila stopped suddenly. Ethan almost collided with her back. The hot chocolate sloshed dangerously in the cup. "Careful, sweetheart," he said. What she didn't answer. Lila stood frozen, staring across the street. Her small body had gone rigid, as if winter itself had crawled into her bones. Her mouth parted slightly. Her eyes widened, not with curiosity, but with shock. Ethan followed her gaze, and then he saw her. Near a trash bin, half buried in snow and black plastic bags, a little girl crouched low, her hands digging through garbage with frantic precision. Her coat was too thin. Her boots were cracked. Snow clung to her tangled brown hair like frost. She was small. 5, maybe younger. But that wasn't what made Ethan's chest tighten. It was her face, the shape of her eyes, the soft curve of her lips, the small, familiar nose. It was Lila's face. Time slowed. The noise of the street faded, the cars, the voices, the wind. Ethan's breath caught painfully in his throat. "Dad." Lila whispered, fingers clutching his sleeve. Her voice trembled. "She looks like me." The girl across the street lifted her head, sensing something. When her eyes met Lila's, she froze. For one impossible second, 2 identical faces stared at each other through falling snow. A living mirror. Fear flashed across the other girl's eyes. Raw, instinctive. She stood abruptly, grabbed a filthy bag, and ran, vanishing into the crowd, swallowed by white and gray. "Wait." Lila took a step forward. Ethan pulled her back, his heart hammering violently. "No," he said, too fast, too sharp. "We're going home." But as they walked away, Ethan knew one terrifying thing. Nothing about his life would ever be the same again. The walk back felt longer, colder. Lila glanced over her shoulder again and again, searching the street, as if expecting the girl to reappear from the snow. Ethan held her hand tighter than necessary, his palm damp inside his glove. "Dad," she said quietly, "are you seeing this like I did?" "Yes." he answered, though his voice sounded distant even to himself. In the car, Ethan's hands shook as he unlocked the door. He helped Lila into her seat, then sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. The windshield fogged from his uneven breathing. Why was she alone? Lila asked from the back seat. Why was she looking in the trash? Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know, sweetheart. But she looked scared, Lila continued. Not lost, just scared. Her words cut deeper than she knew. Snow tapped softly against the windshield, as if the world itself was knocking, demanding answers. Ethan stared straight ahead, his mind racing backward 5 years to a hospital room bathed in sterile light. Marianne's face after giving birth. Too pale, too distant. The way she had held Lila, not with joy, but resignation. Dad, yes, do I have a sister? The question landed like a gunshot. No, Ethan said quickly. You were born alone. Lila frowned, unconvinced. It didn't feel that way. They drove home in silence, the heater humming, snow blurring the road ahead. That night, long after Lila slept, Ethan stood by her bedroom door watching her breathe. Outside, winter howled, and somewhere in the dark, a little girl with his daughter's face was sleeping in the cold. He didn't know how yet. But Ethan Cole was already certain of one thing: he had to find her. That night, Ethan Cole did not sleep. The house was warm, the heater humming softly, but winter pressed its cold palms against every window. Snow scraped lightly along the glass, driven by wind that sounded almost like whispering voices. Ethan lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that face. The girl by the trash. The way her hands moved fast, practiced. The way her eyes froze when she saw Lila. Too familiar. Too identical. He turned onto his side and glanced at the baby monitor on his nightstand. The screen glowed softly, showing Lila asleep, curled on her side, one arm wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. Safe, warm, protected, and somewhere another child the same age was not. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. He pushed himself out of bed and walked down the hallway. The wooden floor creaked beneath his steps. He stopped at Lila's door and opened it just enough to look inside. Her room smelled faintly of lavender soap and clean sheets. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, painting pale shapes on the wall. 5 years ago. The hospital room came back to him with brutal clarity. The harsh lights, the beeping machines. Marianne's face empty, detached. He had thought it was exhaustion, pain, shock from labor. But now, lying awake in the dark, the memory felt wrong, sharper, colder. She hadn't smiled when Lila cried for the first time. She hadn't cried either. She had only whispered, "It's done." Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. "Get it together," he muttered to himself. Coincidences happened. Children looked alike. His mind was playing tricks on him because the situation was disturbing, because winter made everything feel heavier. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had been taken from him. Outside, snow fell harder, thick and relentless. Ethan returned to bed, but sleep refused to come. Instead, a single thought repeated in his mind like a pulse: if that girl was still out there tomorrow, he had to find her. Morning came gray and heavy. Snow covered the streets in thick layers, swallowing sidewalks and curbs alike. The world felt muted, as if sound itself had been buried under white. After dropping Lila at school, Ethan did not turn toward his office. He turned downtown. His heart pounded harder with every block closer to the place where everything had changed. This is ridiculous, he told himself. She won't be there. But when he parked across the street and looked through the windshield, his breath caught. She was there, curled beside the same trash bin, the same thin coat, the same small bag. The girl was digging through frozen garbage with stiff fingers, snow clinging to her sleeves. Ethan didn't think. He just moved. He stepped out of the car, the cold biting through his gloves instantly. In his hands was a paper bag sandwiches, bottled water still cold from the store. He crossed the street slowly, deliberately, not wanting to scare her. When he was a few steps away, he cleared his throat. The girl snapped upright. Her entire body tensed like a trapped animal. Her eyes were wide, calculating distance, escape, danger. "I won't hurt you," Ethan said quickly, raising his hands. "I promise." She didn't run, but she didn't relax either. "You're hungry?" he continued, gently setting the bag down in the snow and stepping back. "It's food, that's all." Her eyes locked onto the bag. Hunger won. She stepped forward, cautiously grabbed it, and backed away again. Her hands trembled as she opened it. When she saw the sandwiches, her breath hitched. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like a child's. It sounded tired. "My name is Ethan," he said, crouching to her level. "What's yours?" She hesitated, clutching the food close to her chest. "Nova," she said finally. "Nova Reed. I'm 5. The words hit him like ice water. 5. Exactly 5. Up close, there was no denying it. The resemblance was terrifying. Every small detail, the tilt of her head, the shape of her eyes, mirrored Lila perfectly. "Do you live around here?" Ethan asked carefully. Nova shook her head. "I don't live anywhere." Ethan felt something inside him crack. "What do you mean you don't live anywhere?" he asked softly. Nova took a bite of the sandwich, slow, careful, as if afraid it might disappear. After swallowing, she looked at him again. "My parents died," she said simply. "Car accident. A few months ago." No tears, no drama, just fact. Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," she shrugged, already taking another bite. "After that, I stayed where I could." "Where do you sleep?" he asked. Nova hesitated. Her eyes flicked away. "Depends. Sometimes under bridges, sometimes empty houses, sometimes nowhere." The way she said it, as if listing weather conditions, made Ethan's chest ache. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, his voice unsteady. "Not in this cold. Not alone." "I can take care of myself," Nova replied, but her small hands shook slightly as she held the sandwich. Ethan watched her carefully. Not just the hunger, the vigilance, the way she never fully turned her back on him. She had learned survival too early. "Nova," he said slowly, making a decision he hadn't planned. "What if you had somewhere warm to stay tonight?" She stopped eating. Her eyes narrowed, not with hope, but with suspicion. "What kind of place? My house," he said. "I have a daughter your age." Nova stiffened. Why the question was sharp. Smart. "Because no child should sleep in the snow," Ethan answered honestly. "And because you remind me of her, like how Nova asked." "You look alike," he said. "Very alike." She studied his face for a long moment, weighing danger against warmth. "And if I don't like it?" she asked. "Can I leave?" "Yes," Ethan said immediately. "Any time." Silence stretched between them, filled only by wind and falling snow. Finally, Nova nodded once. "Okay," she said quietly, "but just one night." Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Snow fell harder around them, and somewhere far away, 2 identical 5-year-old girls were about to share the same roof without knowing they had once shared the same womb. The car moved slowly through streets buried in snow. Nova sat in the back seat, wrapped in Ethan's spare coat, clutching her small bag like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. She stared out the window, eyes following the blur of white and gray, as if memorizing a place she wasn't sure she was allowed to stay in. Ethan kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. He wanted to talk, to ask questions, to understand how a 5-year-old learned where to hide when it was cold and where to run when it wasn't safe. But every time he opened his mouth, he stopped himself. She didn't need interrogation. She needed peace. "You don't have to be scared," he said finally, softly. "No one's going to hurt you." Nova didn't look at him. "I'm not scared," she said. But her shoulders were tense. Her feet were tucked up on the seat, ready to move if needed. When they reached the house, Ethan turned into the driveway. Warm yellow light spilled from the windows onto the snow, turning the yard into something that looked almost unreal, like a place from another world. "This is it," he said. Nova stared at the house. "It's big," she whispered. "It's warm," Ethan replied. He stepped out first, then opened the back door for her. The cold hit them immediately. Nova hesitated before stepping down her boots, crunching into clean, untouched snow. Inside, the air was warm. The smell of soup lingered faintly. Nova froze just past the doorway, eyes darting around. "So, this is a house," she said quietly. Ethan swallowed. "Yes, this is a house." From upstairs, a small voice called out. Dad. Nova stiffened instantly. "That's my daughter," Ethan said. "Her name is Lila." Lila's footsteps came quickly down the stairs, and when she appeared, small, warm, wearing pink pajamas, Nova stopped breathing. Lila froze at the bottom of the stairs. For a long second, no one spoke. The two girls stood facing each other in the glow of the living room light, one clean, one still marked by the street. One safe, one guarded. But their faces, they were the same. Lila's mouth slowly opened. "It's you," she whispered. Nova's grip tightened around her bag. Her eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Lila. "You're her," Nova said quietly. "The girl from yesterday." Lila stepped closer, curiosity overtaking fear. "You really do look like me." Nova nodded. "You too." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Seeing them side by side made the resemblance impossible to ignore. It wasn't just looks. It was posture, expression, the way they tilted their heads in the exact same way. "This is Nova," Ethan said gently. "She's going to stay with us tonight." Lila didn't hesitate. "Okay," she said simply. Nova blinked. "That's it." "That's it," Lila replied, smiling softly. "Do you want to come in more? It's warmer inside." Nova hesitated, then nodded. Lila reached out, then stopped herself. "Can I?" she asked, glancing at Ethan. "Yes," he said, his voice thick. Lila took Nova's hand. It was a small gesture, but it shattered something inside Ethan. They walked together into the living room side by side like they had done it 1,000 times before. "You're really quiet?" Lila said. "Do you like cartoons?" Nova shrugged. "I've never really watched them." Lila's eyes widened. "Then you can watch with me. I'll show you the good ones." Nova's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Ethan turned away for a moment, pretending to adjust his coat. He didn't trust his eyes. The bathroom filled with steam. Nova stood awkwardly by the tub, staring at the clean towels folded neatly on the counter. Everything smelled like soap and warmth and something unfamiliar. "You can use mine," Lila said, holding up a pink towel. "It's strawberry." Nova touched it carefully, as if it might vanish. "I've never had my own towel," she said quietly. Lila frowned. "Well, you do tonight?" While Nova showered, Ethan leaned against the hallway wall, listening to the sound of running water. It felt like a victory, something so small, yet so enormous. When Nova stepped out wrapped in Lila's pajamas, Ethan froze. It was like looking at two versions of the same child. Same height, same face, same eyes. "Oh, wow," Lila said, staring. "We really do look like sisters." Nova looked down at herself, then back up. What's a sister like? Lila thought for a moment. Someone who stays. The words hit harder than either of them realized. They sat together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching cartoons. Nova laughed quietly at first, then louder, surprised by the sound of her own joy. Ethan watched from the doorway, heart pounding. 5 years ago, something had gone wrong. Something had been hidden from him. And now, in the middle of winter, with snow falling outside and two identical 5-year-old girls sharing a blanket, The truth was slowly forcing its way to the surface. Ethan knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This wasn't coincidence. This was history coming back to claim what it had lost. The house fell quiet after the cartoons ended. Nova sat curled at the edge of the couch, knees pulled to her chest, watching the flames in the fireplace flicker. Lila had fallen asleep beside her head, resting lightly on Nova's shoulder, breathing slow and even. Nova didn't move. She was afraid that if she did, the moment would disappear. Ethan stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them. Two identical silhouettes wrapped in the same blanket. Two lives that should never have been separated. He gently lifted Lila and carried her upstairs, laying her in bed. When he returned, Nova was still awake, staring into the fire. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It's too quiet," she admitted. "Quiet usually means I should be careful." Ethan sat across from her. "You don't have to be careful here." She studied him, searching for something she could trust. "Why does she look like me?" Nova asked suddenly. The question struck without warning. "Some people just look alike," Ethan said carefully. Nova shook her head. "No, this is different. It's like I know her." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "She sleeps like me." Nova continued. "She breathes the same. Even her hands, 5 years old, and already noticing what adults refuse to see." Ethan forced a small smile. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure things out." Nova hesitated, then nodded. In the guest room, clean sheets waited. Nova touched them gently, then climbed into bed, eyes wide open in the dark. Down the hall, Ethan leaned against the wall, heart racing. That night, he dreamed of hospital lights and crying babies, and woke up knowing he could no longer ignore the truth. Morning arrived, wrapped in frost. Ethan drove Lila to school, while Nova stayed home, sitting by the window, watching snow fall like feathers. She traced patterns on the glass with her finger, lost in thought. When Ethan returned, he didn't take off his coat. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Birth records, hospital names, dates, 5 years ago, the day Lila was born. He remembered everything too clearly now. Marianne's silence, the way she refused to talk about the birth afterward, the sudden decision to leave the hospital early. Nova hovered nearby, pretending not to watch. "What are you looking at?" she asked quietly. "Something from a long time ago," Ethan replied. "Before Lila, before both of you," he corrected, then froze. Nova's eyes lifted slowly. "Both." He closed the laptop. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Ethan stood and walked to the closet, pulling out an old box, photos, documents, memories he hadn't touched in years. He found the hospital bracelet. March 15th. He sat down heavily. Nova stared at the date, then whispered, "That's my birthday." The room seemed to tilt. "You're sure?" Ethan asked, his voice barely steady. Nova nodded. "I know because it was still snowing that day." Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Same age, same face, same birthday. It was no longer possible to deny. He reached for his phone. "I need help," he murmured. The private investigator's office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Luke Moreno, 42, leaned back in his chair, listening carefully as Ethan spoke. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. When Ethan finished, Luke exhaled slowly. "That's not a coincidence," he said flatly. He opened a folder and wrote 2 names. Lila Cole, Nova Reed. Same age, same appearance, same hospital. Luke shook his head. "That's a pattern." "How long?" Ethan asked. "A few days, maybe a week," Luke replied. "Depends how deep this goes. Go as deep as you have to." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in silence. Back at the house, Nova sat at the table coloring with Lila after school, their heads bent together in perfect symmetry. Lila laughed. You color like me. Nova smiled. Maybe I learned from you. Ethan watched them, feeling both warmth and dread twist together in his chest. Somewhere in the past, a terrible choice had been made. And now, in the dead of winter, the truth was waking up. Slowly, relentlessly, St. Aurelia Medical Center rose out of the snow like a concrete ghost. The building looked older than Ethan remembered: gray walls, narrow windows, a place where life began and ended without ceremony. Snow clung to the steps and melted slowly beneath the constant traffic of shoes and wheels. Ethan stood in the lobby longer than necessary, staring at the sign above the reception desk. Maternity ward. 4th floor. 5 years ago, he had walked these same floors with hope pounding in his chest. Now only dread remained. I'm looking for birth records from March 15, 5 years ago, Ethan said to the receptionist. The woman didn't even look surprised. She sighed. We had a fire 3 years ago, she said. Most physical records before 2021 were destroyed. The words hit like ice water. Destroyed, Ethan repeated. Yes. Basement archive. Electrical fault. She shrugged. Very little survived. Ethan leaned his hand on the counter, steadying himself. What about staff, he asked. Doctors, nurses, anyone who worked maternity back then. The receptionist hesitated, then typed something into her computer. There are a few, she said, but you'll need approval to speak with them. I need to speak to someone, Ethan said quietly. This is about my daughter. Something in his voice must have shifted. The receptionist studied his face, then nodded. There's one nurse, she said. She's still here. Evelyn Hart. Been with the hospital over 25 years. Ethan's pulse spiked. Minutes later, he sat alone in a small break room, the smell of disinfectant thick in the air. Snow pressed against the window, blurring the city into white smears. The door opened. Evelyn Hart, 58, stepped inside. Gray hair pulled tight, lines carved deep around her eyes. She looked tired in a way sleep could never fix. Yes, she asked. Ethan stood. My daughter was born here. March 15th, he said. Her name is Lila Cole. Evelyn frowned, thinking. Do you have a photo? She asked. Ethan pulled out his phone. The moment Evelyn saw Lila's face, the color drained from her own. Her hand flew to the back of the chair. Oh, God, she whispered. Ethan's stomach dropped. You remember, he said. Evelyn closed her eyes. I was hoping I was wrong, she said quietly. But I'm not. Evelyn sat slowly, as if her legs no longer trusted her. That face, she said, voice trembling. I never forgot it. Ethan's heart hammered violently, forgot what he demanded. Evelyn looked at him, tears already pooling. Your wife, she said. Marianne. The name cut deep. She had twins, Evelyn whispered. The room went silent. No, Ethan said immediately. That's not possible. I was there. There was only one baby. Evelyn shook her head. There were two, she said. Identical girls, born minutes apart. Ethan felt dizzy. Why didn't I know, he asked. Because your wife didn't want you to, Evelyn replied. Ethan staggered back, gripping the table. What are you saying? Evelyn's hands shook as she clasped them together. After the birth, your wife was not well, she said. She was cold, panicked. She kept repeating that she couldn't do it, that 2 children would ruin everything. That's a lie, Ethan snapped. We were fine. We had money. She didn't think so. Evelyn interrupted softly. She was afraid of losing control, afraid of you choosing one child over her. Ethan swallowed hard. She asked me to take one baby away, Evelyn said. The words felt unreal. Take her where, Ethan whispered. Anywhere but there, Evelyn replied. She said if I didn't help her, she would handle it herself. Ethan's breath caught. She threatened to hurt one of them. Evelyn broke down, then tears sliding freely. I was terrified, she said. And that same night, another woman on the floor below lost her baby during delivery. She was young, alone, devastated. Ethan already knew the name before she said it. Sarah Reed Evelyn continued. Nova's birth mother. I gave one of the twins to her, Evelyn said, sobbing now. I falsified the papers. I told her it was a miracle. The world tilted. You stole my child. Ethan said, his voice hollow. I did, Evelyn whispered. And I've hated myself every day since. Ethan left the hospital without remembering how. Snow swallowed his footsteps as he stood in the parking lot staring at nothing. 2 daughters, one kept, one erased. Marianne's face flooded his memory again, her distance, her silence, the way she never spoke of the birth afterward. It all made sense now. At home, the house was loud. Too loud. Lila and Nova sat on the living room floor building a tower from wooden blocks. They laughed when it collapsed, laughing in the same rhythm, the same pitch. Twin laughter. Ethan watched from the doorway, his chest splitting open. Nova looked up first. Hi, she said. We're making a city, Lila beamed. She builds just like me. Ethan forced a smile. That's nice, he said. But inside, everything was breaking. That night, after Lila fell asleep, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table staring at Nova's small bag still sitting by the door, the bag she had lived out of. 5 years of cold, 5 years of hunger, 5 years stolen. He finally understood. Nova wasn't lost. She was discarded. Ethan closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the table. Tomorrow he would have to do the hardest thing a parent could do. He would have to tell a 5-year-old girl that the world had betrayed her before she ever understood it. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside that house the truth had finally come home. Ethan sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the only light coming from the stove clock and the faint glow of snow outside the window. The world beyond the glass looked unreal, white drifts, black trees, streetlights smeared by falling flakes. Inside the house was warm. That was the problem. Warmth felt like an accusation. On the counter, 3 clean mugs sat drying in a neat row. 3, not 2. The smallest one still had a faint ring of cocoa at the bottom. Nova's carefully sipped, like she didn't trust it would exist again tomorrow. Ethan stared at the mug until his eyes blurred. He heard the sound of a heater vent clicking, then silence again. Down the hall, 2 doors, 2 little rooms, 2 little breaths. 2 girls with the same face sleeping under the same roof, and one of them had been sleeping under bridges last week. He pressed his palms to his eyes, but it didn't stop the images. Nova's fingers digging through frozen trash. Nova's red knuckles. Nova's automatic flinch when he moved too quickly. Nova saying, quiet usually means I should be careful. 5-year-olds were supposed to fear monsters under the bed, not men with boots, not hunger, not the night. Ethan's phone buzzed once on the table. A message from Luke Moreno confirmed Sarah Reed listed as biological mother. Adoption finalized with Thompsons. Officially no connection to Marianne Cole. Officially. Ethan let out a bitter, broken laugh that died in his throat. Because the truth was no longer a theory. It was a living thing. It was upstairs in the guest room, wrapped in borrowed pajamas, sleeping like a child who had fought too hard to trust a mattress. And the truth was worse than Ethan's imagination had dared to build. He stood and walked to the living room, moving like a man twice his age. The fireplace had burned down to glowing embers. A blanket lay folded on the couch. Lila's with tiny embroidered stars. On the floor, the girls' block tower remained unfinished. 2 identical little sets of footprints stamped into the rug, small ovals side by side, as if they had always belonged together. Ethan's stomach twisted. He thought of Marianne, her voice, her perfume, her smile before the pregnancy. He thought of her fear, the way it sharpened into coldness as the due date got closer. He had told himself she was overwhelmed, He had told himself love was enough to carry them through. But in that hospital room while he was gone getting coffee, she had made a choice that split their family like lightning. One daughter to keep, one daughter to erase. Ethan leaned forward, hands on his knees, breathing hard. His chest felt too tight to hold air. He wanted to scream. He wanted to break something. He wanted to drive back to the hospital and demand Evelyn Hart undo 5 years with a single apology. But none of that would fix the most brutal fact: Nova was his child. And he had not protected her. He walked upstairs. The hallway was dim. The air smelled like clean laundry and quiet. He stopped at Nova's door first. The guest room had been turned into something softer since she arrived. A nightlight plugged in a folded towel on the chair, a pair of fuzzy socks on the bed. Nova slept on her side. One arm wrapped around her small bag, as if she still believed someone might steal her life again while she dreamed. Ethan's throat tightened. He stepped away and moved to Lila's room. She slept sprawled out, hair a halo on her pillow cheeks, pink with warmth. Her stuffed rabbit lay under her chin. Ethan's eyes stung. He loved Lila so fiercely it hurt. And now he loved Nova with the same fierce, helpless instinct, an instinct that had been delayed by a lie. He returned to the hallway and leaned against the wall, staring at the floor. Tomorrow. Tomorrow he would tell Nova what had happened. But how did you tell a child she was stolen? How did you tell a 5-year-old that her own mother had asked for her to disappear? Ethan slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. Outside, the wind pushed snow against the house like fingers tapping. Inside, Ethan made a vow so quiet it barely existed as sound. "I'm done being late," he whispered. "I'm done being fooled. I'm done losing you." Morning came pale and sharp. The sky was the color of cold steel. Snow fell in thin, steady lines as if the world was writing something it couldn't erase. Ethan made pancakes because he didn't know what else to do with his hands. Lila bounced in her chair, talking about school. Nova ate slowly, politely, watching each bite like it might be her last. When breakfast ended, Ethan's voice came out too calm. "Nova," he said gently, "can you come with me for a minute outside?" Nova's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Outside?" she asked. "It'll be quick," Ethan said. "Just us." Nova glanced at Lila. Lila looked up, confused. "Where are you going?" Lila asked. "To talk," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Grown-up stuff." Nova slid off her chair. She didn't argue, but Ethan saw it, the way her shoulders tightened the second she stood, the way she prepared herself for bad news. They stepped into the backyard. The cold hit like a slap. Snow crunched under their shoes. Ethan's breath came out in thick clouds. Nova stood near the porch steps, arms tucked close to her body, eyes scanning the fence line like she was measuring escape routes. Ethan hated that. He walked to the wooden table under the bare tree, the branches black and skeletal against the white sky. "Sit," he said softly. Nova sat, but not comfortably. Her feet barely reached the ground. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers curled together like knots. Ethan sat across from her. For a moment, he simply watched her face. Now that he knew, the resemblance wasn't eerie anymore. It was proof. "Nova," he began, choosing each word as if it could cut. "Do you remember telling me your birthday?" Nova nodded. "March 15th. My daughter Lila's birthday is March 15th too," Ethan said. Nova blinked. "Yeah," she whispered. "That's why she looks like me." Ethan swallowed. "It's more than that," he said. "I found out you were born in the same hospital as Lila." Nova's eyes narrowed slightly. "So we were born in the same place?" "Yes," Ethan said. His hands trembled under the table. "Same night, same early morning." Nova stared at him, silent, processing. Ethan forced himself to keep going before he lost courage. "I went to the hospital," he said. "I spoke to someone who was there that night." Nova's voice was small. "Did you find my mom?" Ethan's heart clenched. He took a deep breath. Nova. The woman who raised you, Sarah, she loved you. She was your mother in every way that matters. Nova's brow furrowed. But she's gone. I know, Ethan whispered. And I'm so sorry. The wind hissed through branches. Snow landed on Nova's hair, melting slowly. Ethan leaned forward. The hospital nurse told me something, he said. Something that explains why you and Lila look the same. Nova didn't move. Okay. Ethan felt his throat tighten. She said, Marianne Cole, my wife, had twins. Nova's eyes widened. Not with excitement, with fear. Twins, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Identical twin girls. Nova's lips parted, but no sound came out. Ethan's chest burned. One of those babies was Lila, he continued. The other, he paused. His voice broke. The other baby was you. Nova stared at him like the world had turned sideways. No, she whispered. That's not, it is, Ethan said, voice trembling. Nova, I'm your father. Silence. The wind, the snow. Ethan's heartbeat. Nova's eyes searched his face the way a child searches for lies, because lies are safer than hope. You're sure, she asked, voice cracking. Like, really sure? Ethan nodded, tears spilling before he could stop them. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear to you, I didn't know you existed. I was told I had one baby, one daughter. Nova's breathing turned shallow. So why? Her voice shook. Why was I alone? Ethan's stomach twisted. He couldn't say everything. Not the threat, not the cruelty in full detail. But he could not lie. Because an adult made a terrible decision, he said softly. A decision you didn't deserve. A decision that hurt you. Nova's chin trembled, but she didn't cry, not yet. She just stared at the snow on the table as if it held answers. Then slowly she slid off the chair and walked around the table. Ethan stood unsure if she was going to run. Nova stopped in front of him. She looked up with eyes too old for 5 years, and she wrapped her arms around him tight. Fierce, like she had been holding that hug in her bones for a lifetime. Ethan froze, then crushed her gently to his chest. Nova's voice came out as a whisper against his coat. I always knew, she said. Not the words, but the feeling. Ethan sobbed silently, holding her as snow landed on both their shoulders. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Nova didn't pull away. It wasn't your fault, she murmured. You didn't know. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the moment carve a new truth into him. This wasn't rescue anymore. This was return. They stayed outside longer than Ethan planned. Not because he had more to say, because he couldn't stop holding Nova, because the simple fact of her warmth in his arms felt like a miracle he didn't deserve. When they finally stepped back inside, the heat hit them immediately. Nova's cheeks were flushed from cold. Ethan's eyes were still wet. Lila was on the living room rug, building a city alone, tongue poking out in concentration, the way she always did. She looked up when they entered. Are you done with grown-up stuff? She asked. Ethan swallowed. Nova stood a step behind him, watching. Ethan knelt down in front of Lila. Sweetheart, he said softly. We need to talk about Nova. Lila's eyes brightened. Can she stay more nights? She's fun, and she laughs like me. Nova's mouth twitched into a tiny smile. Ethan's chest tightened at the innocence in Lila's voice. Yes, he said. She can stay. Lila clapped once, delighted, but Ethan didn't let the moment drift away. Lila, he continued, voice gentler now, do you remember when you asked if you have a sister? Lila's smile faded into curiosity. Yeah, she said. You said no. Ethan winced, not from guilt, but from the taste of the old lie. I said no because I believed it, he whispered. I didn't know something important. Lila tilted her head. What important? Ethan took a breath. You and Nova were born on the same day, he said. In the same hospital. Lila blinked. So, we're birthday twins, she asked, half excited. More than that, Ethan said. He glanced back at Nova. Nova stood still, hands clasped tightly in front of her eyes, nervous but steady. Ethan looked back to Lila. Lila? Nova is your sister, he said. Your twin sister. Lila's eyes went wide. Twin, like matching, she whispered. Yes, Ethan said. Exactly like matching. Lila stared at Nova. Nova stared back. For a second, the room was so quiet Ethan could hear the heater hum and the distant tick of the kitchen clock. Then Lila stood up slowly and walked toward Nova like she was approaching a mirror she didn't fully trust. Nova didn't move. She waited. Lila lifted a hand, then hesitated. Can I touch your hair? She asked softly. Nova nodded once. Lila touched Nova's hair with careful fingers as if confirming she was real. We really are the same, Lila whispered, voice full of wonder. Nova's eyes shimmered. I didn't know, Nova said quietly. I didn't know either. Lila's face crumpled for a second like her brain was trying to hold too much. But why didn't I know? She asked, Ethan, voice suddenly small. Why didn't we grow up together? Ethan's heart clenched. He chose the only truth a child could carry. Because adults made mistakes, he said. Big mistakes. And those mistakes hurt Nova. Lila's eyes filled with tears immediately. Did she get cold? Lila asked, voice breaking. Did she get scared? Nova looked down. Ethan could have lied. He could have protected Lila from the ugliness, but he wouldn't build another family on denial. Yes, he said softly. She did. A lot. Lila's tears spilled fast. She stepped forward and hugged Nova without asking permission, small arms wrapping around her sister like she was trying to glue the world back together. I'm sorry, Lila sobbed into Nova's shoulder. I didn't know you were out there. Nova stiffened for a split second, then hugged back carefully like she was learning how to be held. It's okay, Nova whispered. You didn't do it. Ethan watched them, feeling his chest split open and heal at the same time. Two identical girls, one house, one winter, and for the first time the snow outside didn't feel like punishment. It felt like the world being washed clean, slowly, quietly, flake by flake. Snow kept falling gentle now, like the sky had finally gotten tired of being cruel. Upstairs, Nova stood in the doorway of the guest room that no longer felt like a guest room. The air smelled like clean fabric softener and pancake syrup drifting up the stairs. The heater hummed. The walls were still plain, but the warmth made the emptiness feel temporary, like a blank page instead of a prison. Lila tugged Nova's sleeve. Come on, we're fixing it. Fixing what? Nova asked carefully, like she expected a trick. Your room, Lila said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Not a borrowing room, a yours room. Ethan watched from the hallway as Lila ran to her own room and returned dragging a small box of stickers, a folded blanket with tiny stars, and a stuffed rabbit almost the same size as Nova's bag. I'm sharing, Lila announced. Nova froze at the word. Sharing was dangerous. Sharing meant you owed someone. Sharing meant it could be taken back the second you did something wrong. I don't need, Nova began. Yes, you do. Lila cut in, not unkindly, just certain, because sisters do that. Ethan stepped into the room quietly and set a small envelope on the dresser. Inside were papers Luke had printed, temporary guardianship steps, school enrollment forms, the beginning of the legal work to make sure Nova could not be lost again. This is your home, Ethan said, voice low. Not for a night. Not for a week. For real. Nova's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She walked to the bed and pressed her palm to the blanket like she was checking if it was solid. Then she reached for her bag and stopped. For the first time, she didn't pull it closer. Instead, she placed it gently on the floor beside the bed, still near, but not clutched like a life raft. A small act. a massive surrender. Lila climbed onto the bed and patted the spot beside her. Sit. Nova sat. And in the warm light of that room, snow tapping quietly against the window, Nova's shoulders lowered just a little, like her body was starting to believe the word stay. Sunday came with a brighter sky, the kind of winter day that made the snow sparkle instead of threaten. Ethan took the girls to the park. Lila ran ahead, boots kicking up powder, laughing loud enough to make strangers turn and smile. Nova followed slower at first, like she didn't trust Joy to be free. But then Lila grabbed her hand. "Race you to the swings," Lila said. Nova blinked. Race Lila was already sprinting. Nova hesitated, then chased her. And when she reached the swings, breathless, cheeks red, she laughed real laughter, the kind that escaped before fear could stop it. Ethan pushed them one at a time, watching two identical faces rise into the pale winter sun. Two girls, one life that should have been shared from the start. A man with a camera approached, bundled in a scarf, friendly eyes. "Sorry," he said. "You look like a very happy family. Want a photo?" Ethan looked at the girls. Lila shouted yes instantly. Nova's gaze flicked to Ethan, still asking permission in the quiet way she always did. Ethan nodded. They sat together on a blanket, Ethan in the middle, one daughter on each side. The photographer lifted the camera. "Say, family." "Family," Lila yelled. Nova whispered it at the same time, soft, careful, like the word might break if she said it too loudly. The camera clicked. Snow drifted behind them like a curtain. And for the first time in 5 years, the truth wasn't only pain. It was proof. That night, the photo sat on the kitchen counter while Ethan washed dishes. Lila kept running in to look at it again, proud like she'd won something. Nova stood at the edge of the room, arms folded over her chest, staring at the picture as if it belonged to someone else. Ethan dried his hands and walked over. "You can put it in your room," he said gently, "or anywhere you want." Nova swallowed. "In my room," Ethan nodded. "Your room." Lila popped up beside Nova like a spark. "We should put the big one in the living room," she declared, "so everyone sees we're together." Nova's eyes flicked to Ethan, uncertain. "Is that okay?" she asked. What if people ask questions?" Ethan crouched to her height. "Then we tell them the truth," he said. "That you're my daughter. That you're Lila's sister. That you're home." Nova's throat worked like she was pushing something down. "And the person who did it?" she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "That was an adult sin," he said. "Not yours. Not Lila's. I won't let it touch you anymore." Nova stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once small, brave. They framed the photo together and placed it in the center of the living room shelf. Lila stepped back, hands on her hips like a tiny boss. "Perfect," she said. "Now it looks like a real house." Nova didn't speak. She just stared at the photo, 3 faces, 2 identical, 1 tired, but finally whole. A minute later, Nova walked to Ethan and took his hand. Not grabbing, not clinging, just holding like it was normal. "Can we do pancakes again tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Ethan's eyes stung. "Every morning if you want," he promised. Nova nodded, and for the first time she leaned her head lightly against his arm. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside the house was no longer split into before and after. It was just one thing now: home. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.